So today I'm doing a pre-recorded birth chart reading, and I'm using the Adityas for that reading. So when you go to my website, you can choose between Vedic Astrology, Tropical Vedic Astrology, and the Adityas. So this person has requested information about, these are their questions, about how astrology can help them with their Kriya yoga practice. And they have asked about past lives and their Atmakaraka planet and about the past 3 years. They've been very intense and wondering if that shows up in their astrology. I already made a video before this explaining how I'm going to lay out the chart here for using Adityas. Adityas are really experiencing a renaissance. We're reclaiming this ancient and really beautiful form of astrology. So everything is a little bit new in how they are being represented. So I am going to use a chart here, and this is going to look like a South Indian chart, but it is not a South Indian chart. So I'm just going to lay it out first. If you follow astrology, you may have seen this before, but if you haven't, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to put here, just in case anybody's watching, this is not South Indian chart, because the South Indian chart has a very specific layout, and I'm changing that for the purpose of our Adityas reading today. And I think maybe you'll see why when I get started. So you can go and watch the previous video, but I'm just going to put in here the name of our Adityas, and I'm starting at the top with Varuna, the god of all-encompassing love. This space is where humans can learn more about all-encompassing love. And over here, I am putting Indra. This is that really important love of the self. And next door, I am putting Vivashwan, the love of humans, followed by Tvasta, the love of forms, and Vishnu, the love of transformation, Amshu, the love of creation, Bharga, the love of focus and discernment, Pushan, the love of nourishment, Parjanya, the love of growth, Data, the love of bearing, and Aryama, the love of companionship, and Reta, the love of friendship. So these we discussed in our lead-up video. One of the reasons why I'm representing this is so that I can remind us about the chakras in the human body. This links a little bit to the person's question about Kriya. I am highlighting the base chakra here, and I'm putting it in red. These first two spaces in the ecliptic that are called Pushana Bharga Aditya are associated for this diagram with the base chakra, and we can think about Saturn being attached to these two Adityas. Right next door in Prajanya, I'm going to use orange to represent our second chakra, and we can think about Jupiter as having a relationship with these two 30-degree areas of space. Then moving up into the third chakra, I am using yellow, and these spaces, Data and Vishnu, can be associated with Mars. Next, the heart center, the fourth chakra, I'm putting in green. These spaces can be associated with Venus when we think about it as ruling different chakras and linking it with astrology. And then I have Rita and I have Vivashwan linked with Mercury and the fifth chakra. Finally, at the top here, I have the sixth chakra being shared by Varuna and Indra Aditya. Varuna associated with the moon, Indra associated with the sun. So I have now drawn the ecliptic, each of these boxes representing 30 degrees. There are 12 of them. It adds up to 360 degrees of our ecliptic, and which Aditya is associated with that 30-degree portion. I'm making a little metaphor correlation here between this ecliptic and our chakra system. If we think about Earth being in the middle of this diagram, we can see how the sun would move through clockwise, and that when it's in Northern Hemisphere summer, the sun is very high in the sky and is at the top of our chakra diagram. And then the sun moves through the autumn and we get the equinox here. And then the sun comes through to Christmas time when in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the least amount of sunlight. And we have our Saturn, Adityas, and our root chakra. And then the sun moves through the spring at this equinox and comes up into the new summer all over again. This is a cycle that the sun moves through the ecliptic from our perspective. So regardless of whether you're using any sorts of astrology, if you're a Westerner and someone says, what's your star sign? They're asking, where was the sun? In which portion of the sky was the sun when you were born? So here we have the layout of the chart, and we can see that we have a question about Kriya. I have rotated the chart as if it is representing those 6 chakras of the human body from the root to the third eye. And we'll come back to how to use this for Kriya during our discussion. That's one of the questions that the person asked. When I'm working with Adityas, I really like to look at where is the sun for this person, because Adityas are the sun gods. They are the sons of Aditi, and they really have a strong resonance with the sun. So we want to have a look at where is this person's sun located. And it turns out that the sun for this person is in Tvasta Aditya. I know that this is going to be one of the Adityas that I want to speak about, because in this particular chart, I have Saturn and I have Rahu both here in Tvasta Aditya. So I know that this is going to be a strong and important energy for this person. I know the mythology that's going to be resonating with this person is going to have something to do with Tvasta Aditya. And not only that, I can see that right above in this person's birth chart, I have Jupiter and Mercury in Vivashwan. So I have a real concentration of energies in this pocket of the ecliptic. I've got 5 out of 9 planets, and that's more than half. So I know that Vivashwan and Tvasta are going to be really important. And this is beautiful because there's a lot of synergy between Vivashwan and Tvasta. And their main mythological story that I want to share has a lot to do with the sun. So let's make some notes about the significance of having Vivashwan and Tvasta as important and accentuated Adityas in this chart. So when we look at this diagram, there's a real flow between all of these Adityas. There's a blending of the mythological stories between Adityas, and that's why we're going to see how interlinked these are. But I want to draw your attention to, in fact, that Vivashwan would be coming from Indra. So Indra would feed into Vivashwan and Tvasta, and it would keep going. Because as we spoke about at the beginning of our discussion, Varuna and Indra actually represent the height of summer. This is the solstice right here in between them. The height of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. This is the time when the sun is the highest in the sky and has the most hours of daylight over the horizon. Depending on where you live on the planet, you might have really long, sunny summer days here in this time of year. So we're coming into this mythology from an understanding of the sun being bright and strong. And we know that Indra is the love of the self. And we can think about Indra's role in mythology as the conqueror. He's the king of everything, dharmic living, and he's the person in charge. Everybody wants to, if they have to take over, they want to become powerful, they would have to defeat Indra. He is it. So the sun coming from this position, we know, is very strong. And here in Vivashwan and Tvasta, we see that sun becoming useful because Vivashwan is the love of humanity. And we see Indra being the love of self, transforming here into the love of humanity. So what does the sun need to do to become useful? It's great living for the self. In Indra, this is really important, and it's great that we have a sun there more or less in the middle of our solar system. You know, we get to the astronomy of it, of course, that the sun is a little bit rotating even in the middle of the solar system. But for us conceptually, it's so wonderful that we have the sun through which we can all orbit. The sun is holding on to all of these planets. But here in Vivashwan, we're beginning to learn about how to sustain humanity. Vivashwan, the name, can actually be used for the sun. So we can think about this space, Vivashwan, this symbol. The Adityas are a symbolic language, the same as any other astrology. Vivashwan can be synonymous with the sun. And the sun in this mythology takes a bride. And in fact, he marries Tvasta's daughter. So Tvasta is the divine architect. He is the lover of forms. And his role is to design everything that is required for Dharma. So he can bring into creation new forms by designing them. Then they might be built somewhere else. He doesn't have to build them. He has to design them. So whenever there is a need, a dharmic need for anything, a whole new anything, Tvasta is able to sit at that architect's tilted tables and create a whole new design for whatever form is required. And his daughter, Sanjana, becomes the bride for the sun. And she is an ascetic. She's an accomplished yogi. She is spiritually powerful in her own right. And she marries the sun. They are a wonderful couple, and they are lucky enough to have 3 children. One called Manu Vivashwan, and then twins called Yama and Yamuni. Manu is actually very important because Manu goes on to create humans themselves. So Vivashwan, this area of mythology, this area of the sun, this area of the ecliptic is actually where humans are born out of in this Manvantara. So Vivashwan, in his own way, is the grandfather of the human that we are. So they have a child that will go on to create humans in this epoch. And they also have these twins, one Yama and one Yamuna. And Yama, you might have heard of, is maybe the god of death or helps transport people to death, the one that comes when the time is right. So very important children. And they're going along happily, but Samjama begins to realize that the sun's rays are burning. We all know this feeling. The sun is so bright. Its rays are all fierce and crooked and bright, and Samjama has to be next to this all the time. So after a period of time, she's beginning to find that these blinding rays of the sun are too much and they're too fierce. And I love this story because I think in couples you can have a more dominant personality or someone who's more charismatic, and you can be the spouse that plays that support role, and you are essential, but you can't be seen next to that bright spouse. So I love this story where Samjana begins to find her husband too bright. She is being burned by his fierce rays. And I think this also speaks about, can the sun really see her? If someone's standing next to a very bright light, they become silhouetted or they reflect back so much light. When you look at them, bright light is coming from you. What is beaming back is just the reflected light. She's beginning to feel like the sun maybe is not even seeing her. And as we talked about, it could be a silhouette, but anyway, she creates, in fact, a clone to take her place. She realizes because of all of her yoga training that it's not sustainable for her to be there. So she creates this clone. It's called Chaya, which means shadow. So she creates someone that looks just like her and puts her into the role, and she takes her leave because she can no longer bear the brightness of the sun. She makes sure that Chaya knows to look after the children and to maintain the relationship with the husband, with the son, and not to tell him what's going on. Chaya does very well for a while. Then she begins having her own children with the son. The first child she had is also called Manu, and his name is Manu Savani. He's apparently going to be the next Manu for the next epoch. The second child she has is Shani, which is the planet Saturn. And it's a really interesting part of this mythology that Sun gives birth to Saturn. So it's the Sun all about Indra, love of self, uprightness, being the king, being at the top of the pack, being at the top of the tree, looking over everything. Also gave birth to everything that we feel flawed about, everything that is imperfect, that is broken, that is slow, that is lame, that you kind of want to hide away, right? Because it's not your best feature. The Sun also gave birth to Saturn. So there's this beautiful mythology evolving here. And now that Chaya has her own children, she begins to favor her own biological children and treat Samji's original children not as well. And Yama just can't put up with this. He spots it and calls her out. He gets so angry about it that he lifts up his foot ready to kick her. And he doesn't end up kicking her, but that's how angry he feels at this mistreatment. And Chaya is outraged that one of her children would treat her in this way. And I guess she's outraged because she's been called out and the whole facade that's going on here is about to fall apart. So in that stressful situation, she curses Yama and says, you've raised your foot to me. I curse you that your foot will drop off. So at this point, Yama realizes this is not correct. And he goes to speak to his father. He explains the whole thing. The father can't change the curse, but he modifies it to be forest worms that burrow into your skin are going to take a bite of your foot and they will spit out that flesh because they're wood eating. They're going to eat the flesh and spit it out. When that flesh of your foot hits the ground, that will fulfill this curse. So Yama is safe from being crippled, but it is brought to the Sun's attention that something is not going right here. And he confronts Chaya. She stays silent, which is what she's promised to do. She promised that she would stay quiet as long as the Sun didn't hurt a hair on her head. And when she stays silent, he pulls back her hair and asks her to really tell me what's going on. And so doing that, touching her head in this way, she's now freed from her promise to Samjana and she explains what's happened. So this is a very beautiful moment for the Sun, very humbling. And I think it's humbling for the children too. And I think this says so much about motherhood and wifehood, that you can be that provider, that homemaker. You're essential to everything. But do your children really see you, and does your husband really see you and look at you and notice who you are? Here it is, the Sun didn't notice and the children, only Yama finally noticed. Love this element of the mythology. But the Sun wants to rectify this situation. He's realized that he needs to do something because he loves Samjana. He wants her back. And how can he be so fierce and bright that she can't even live by him? So the Sun marches off to Tvasta and he says to Samjana's father, what's going on? Your daughter has run away from me. And Tvasta explains that she had come to Tvasta's hermitage and explained her situation, and that Tvasta, the father, had told her that it was her duty to return to her husband, but Samjana knew so well how to look after herself that instead of going back to her husband, she took the form of a horse, a female horse, and she descended to earth and she ate the pastures. And I like to think, as a mother and wife myself, she went on a retreat, like a mental health retreat, rejuvenating her body, rejuvenating her spirit, eating good food, and practicing that ascetic life that she was already well versed in. She was not at the health spa. She was just living in a natural way. And the Sun pleads with Tvasta, what can we do to rectify the situation? And Tvasta explains that the Sun is just too bright. He's too fierce. All those rays you have, they're too jagged. You need to bring those rays into a gentle form to be useful. And this is what Vivashwan, the love of Vivashwan, is all about. You need to learn how to become a gentle Sun. And the Sun asks, or Vivashwan asks Tvasta for his help. And Tvasta, being the divine architect, is able to put the Sun up on the lathe, spin him around, and use the tool to shave off the jagged and fierce rays of the Sun. So he takes the Sun from being a square and jagged with rough edges into its beautiful round form that humans and earthlings are able to thrive and grow and flourish on earth. So Tvasta is the divine architect who trims the rays of the sun, makes him beautiful and gentle, and then sends him down to earth, hoping to encounter with Samjana, who is currently a mare. She doesn't recognize her husband because he's really transformed himself. I like to think this is very beautiful, the sun having that humility to realize that it is worth him taking on board this feedback and taking action on that. So this beautiful husband behavior here. And so he transforms himself into a horse as well. And through a process, they are able to reunite and recognize each other. And they go on then to produce the Ashvini twins, which are very important healing doctors, but also very important strategic advisors during wartime. Out of their reconnection comes very useful, both doctors and strategy. This is the story that links Vivashwan with Tvasta. Now, why am I saying all of this to you? What does this have to do with you? That something about this story is really important. And as you're listening, you're going to know what that is. But what I love about the Vedic astrology or the mythology of this area is Vivashwan's love for humanity, that the sun here in Indra, the conqueror, the king of the pack, is willing to become useful. And this is where Vivashwan becomes the love of humanity. And here we also see in Tvasta this love of forms is to enable Dharma to keep going, a willingness to adapt, to redesign, to create new designs. Something about this area of space is really important. And we can tell a little bit about what might be going on because we have the most beautiful combination of planets here. First of all, we have Mercury in Vivashwan. So Mercury is associated with this area of space. So Mercury is right here in its own home in Vivashwan. This is a place where it feels very comfortable. And we can see that because Vivashwan is the love of humanity, and Mercury is that planet of curiosity that allows humans to explore what it is to be human and in this experience. Mercury allows us to be curious and to investigate and find out who we are and what life is all about. Mercury is a great planet to associate with Vivashwan. Just like all of the Adityas, Vivashwan has its own rishi, and that is Rishi Bhrigu, and he writes the law of man. So each rishi gives the Aditya its particular law, and in Vivashwan, Rishi Bhrigu, maybe I'm just going to draw this in the same color here so that we just know that this relates to this. Rishi Bhrigu gives the law of man, and Mercury is perfect for this because Mercury gives us attention to detail, to following the rules, to writing things down, keeping accounts, adding up the left ledger and the right ledger. All of these skills are mercurial. So Rishi Bhrigu helps Manu. We see here in Vivashwan, we see that this is the love of humanity. Vivashwan is the grandfather of humans, you and I, and his Rishi gives the law that is going to allow humans to prosper in this epoch, in this Manvantara. So, of course, it is this Rishi that would define those laws. And there's a beautiful story in the Mahabharata that illustrates this. And I think Vivashwan really shows us how these laws really resonate with this part of space, with this symbol that he represents. And this is represented in this story when the 5 brothers are exiled to the forest and they're asked to meditate upon the sun god Vivashwan. He appears before Yudhishthira, the oldest brother, and he gives them a magical copper pot. And in this pot, they can gather during the day whatever they can find in the forest, leaves or roots, barks, seeds, maybe some berries, whatever they find, put it in the pot, and the sun god Vivashwan is going to create a meal that will satisfy them and everyone that needs to eat. And it will replenish itself until Draupadi eats. And then once she's eaten, that's the end of the pot for the day. So this already encodes for us some of these laws of man, that here's Draupadi, maybe the richest woman on earth. She's got 5 husbands. So the other way round, men normally collect wives. In this case, she's got 5 providers. So she's very rich in that way. And it's showing that in the law of man for this epoch, it's about sharing the resources, and everyone can eat until the richest person eats at the end. It's not that the richest person eats first, and good luck with the scraps. Vivashwan is telling us that life will flourish on earth as long as we feed the needy first. And if we live by these laws of man, then this Manvantara, this epoch, will flourish. So this is the kind of space where all of these rules that Mercury is so good at dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and all the bureaucracy and all the sections and subsections, it's a very mercurial kind of space, right? Will thrive because this is all about the love of humanity and the law of man. So this is great because we have Mercury here. And right next door in Tvasta, we have Saturn, who is exalted when it is in Tvasta. And Saturn is exalted here because this is the love of forms. And we can see that in both cases, the children of the sun, both from Samjana and Chaya, they both have this association with death, right? Yama helps us all when it's our time of death. And Saturn, this child of the sun, helps all humans, so we all have Saturn in our birth chart somewhere, to detach and to let go and to know when it's time to move on. Saturn helps us with that. The discipline to know when something has run its course. He does very well in Tvasta because this love of humanity and this love of forms has embedded in it the cycle of nature. Things have a period of time and then they cease in the form that they are. Like our spirit never changes, but all of our forms are changing all of the time. So the body needs to die. And Saturn does very well here. And in some ways, both Vivaswan and Tvasta have that more pragmatic approach. They're both associated with the love of humanity, the love of man, the love of forms. So there's an acceptance of the life cycle here in Vivaswan and Tvasta. Vivaswan is very interested in humanity continuing, not necessarily the individual human, but humanity itself. And for humanity to continue, we need to share our resources. And when it's no longer our time, it's time for us to leave. You can't stay forever. So we have these 2 planets that are doing really well. So this person who's asked for a pre-recorded birth chart reading has 2 planets in arguably their best positions in any chart. So this is a great blessing. And I'm really interested to see how you're resonating with this mythology. But there are 2 planets that in some ways are really struggling with their placements too. So we've got Mercury doing very well, Saturn doing very well, but Jupiter doesn't do as well in Vivaswan, and Sun particularly struggles in Tvasta in a way. And this is partly why I've drawn this diagram in this layout, because we were talking about the sun being high in the sky in summer here, moving around clockwise, being low in the sky in winter, and coming up through the spring back towards summer. So where the sun is getting its most power is when it is coming up to cross this equinox point. Then it is coming up into the spring, and just like a rocket, it has the most fuel when it is on its way up. So here's a bit of a rocket. Then it's got all the fuel that it needs to begin this solar journey up to the top of the sky. But once it gets to the top of the sky, it's now the rocket falling down, coming back to Earth, going to crash land in the ocean. And actually its power is at its weakest right here as it's crossing into the equinox where it will be heading into winter. So the sun here in some ways struggles because it's not full of rocket fuel, full of solar energy. It is on its way down to completely run out of fuel. Then it will be restocking all the way through here on this internal journey. Now, when we think about that in tropical, we think the sun struggles here. But when we look at the mythological story, we see that this is exactly, in order to have the love of forms, which is what Tvasta is all about, the sun needs to get on the lathe of Tvasta and take off his fierce rays. So it's actually where the sun becomes more beautiful. It's very interesting because at this time of year, the sun is really glorious, sort of autumn light where there's so many beautiful colors and it's not that burning sun that we might have had in the summer. But what that can mean for this person, we have Sun and Saturn in the same sign. This is always challenging because they have different approaches to life. They have this very difficult origin story. This is kind of daddy issues, isn't it? Because here is the Sun, the father of Saturn, but he actually effectively rejects Saturn because he punishes Chaya. Her children are booted out. He's not interested in that lineage. He's really interested in getting Samja back. So they have a fraught relationship because of the broken father bond that they share, or father and son bond. But they also have very different approaches to life. So in astrology, the sun is, we said at the beginning, it's about our glowing features, our brightest gifts and offerings that we have to share with the world. And we find that in this chart, it's with Saturn, who is wanting to be behind the scenes and helping us end things. So the sun wants to be shining at the top, at the center of everything, at the center of every conversation and leading from the front. Saturn wants to be in the background and clearing things out. If it was a palace, the sun would be the king and Saturn would be the servant. Servants don't want to be seen by the king because you're either going to get in trouble because the king is looking for you. So you don't want to see the king. It's a really bad sign. Or the king is going to give you more chores to do. So Saturn doesn't want that. It wants to get on with all the dirty work that the servants have to do, the clearing out of the meals and the scraping the plates and the washing up and getting the rubbish out of the castle. Does not want to be seen by the sun. Now, what does this mean for this person? Saturn is doing well. It's always tricky to be near the sun, whoever you are, as Sanjana was telling us, because she's so powerful. She's a yogi, and even she found it hard to be by the sun. So any planet with the sun is going to find it hard. Putting that aside, this is a place where Saturn is more comfortable. I'm expecting that this setup is causing a tension between following my own strengths and my own inspirations and serving others and compromising and staying in the background. And knowing which of those to do and when, I think, is what could be challenging from this placement. That we feel perhaps that when we follow our inspiration, people might often say to you, just be your true self and you need to be you and, let your true self shine. But when that happens, it wouldn't surprise me if the strength of Saturn here kind of exposes some flaws in the beautiful gifts that this person has and makes them feel that maybe they should get back in their box, that they shouldn't get out there. It's too much risk of being humiliated or exposed, maybe better. And then it might not show up like that because I don't know this person at all, but it could be that this person is actually wonderful at helping others find their true calling, helping others express who they truly are, and is wondering if that's a flaw in themselves, that they're not the one out the front. Is it some weakness that they have? They're feeling like I'm really able to help others, but does it mean I'm a failure because I'm not out the front? So Sun and Saturn can give us issues around identity. The Sun is saying what I am, and Saturn is saying what I'm not. Saturn helps us to know what we are not, because that's what we can let go of. So it keeps putting in front of us what we're not so that we detach from that. However, it's not very pleasant in life to be shown what you are not. So a real conversation between what I am and what I am not. Sometimes I think about Sun and Saturn as being like Harry Potter and Voldemort. They kind of can't exist without each other. Their greatness is in the battle. Each of them brings out the greatness of each other and who's going to win that battle. What Vedic astrology would be saying in this case is that it is okay for Saturn to win this battle and for the sun to trim its rays. So if this person does feel like, is it a flaw that they are not out the front and leading from the front or famous or whatever it is, this chart would actually be saying that this is good for the sun to be learning that gentleness and humility. So having never met this person or spoken to them, I don't know anything at all. This could be something that's going on based on these planets. And it's interesting asking about the past lives, because if we're a Westerner and we're exposed to astrology, the sun sign becomes really important. And for those of us whose suns are not the strongest in our chart and are not in the strongest position, it can set us up for a confrontation, because there might be other planets in this chart that are more powerful and have an agenda that is suited to the chart, whereas the sun might be like that grit in the shoe or the grit in the oyster that's making the pearl. So in terms of past lives, this person maybe feels like in this lifetime they're not fully living from their solar self, or they don't have any interest in living from the front or being the beaming light or being the big personality because of their past life. We can see that something about this solar setup might be feeding into that. And we'll come back to that in a minute. But now I just wanted to return to the other planet that is not doing so well here, which is Jupiter. Remember, we had Mercury doing really well in Vivashwan because it's the love of humanity and the law of man. Jupiter doesn't do so well here because Jupiter, the guru, the remover of darkness, this great big planet that we all loved, breaks a whole lot of rules. So if you read Vedic Astrology, Mythology, so for those who joined me in the Greatness of Saturn book club, and we read through these myths of the planets, Venus will be here, Venus owns Tvasta, following every rule with the Asuras and diligently trying to improve the Asuras. And Jupiter with the Devas, if things go out of balance, he'll just break a few rules or change the goalposts in order to ensure that the Devas are winning. So Jupiter's mission, his remover of darkness, teaches us for the Devas. He's operating on a level of their biggest integrated view you can imagine. He's just not worried about the laws of man and these pesky little laws. So when he's in Vivashwan, he gets cramped because Mercury's here, dotting every I, crossing every T. Did you put your form in triplicate? Have you justified your actions? And Jupiter, who's just enormous, Jupiter is this big gravitational planet. We're talking about whether the sun was at the center of the solar system. We say that because Jupiter is actually heavy enough to sort of move the sun a little bit in the middle there. So Jupiter grows things. That's why it's an indicator for wealth. Grows things for prosperity, for abundance. It's very wise, very compassionate, and it's beyond these little human rules that we have. So it here can become penny pinching, worried, have anxious thoughts, because it's like being bothered by Mercury who's saying, where's your paperwork? And it can't operate in that expansive, loving way that Jupiter would feel more comfortable in these other places, in Varuna, Prajanya, and Amshu. So we have two planets that are operating well. They are pragmatically implementing the laws of man, the laws of forms. They are implementing what Tvasta's law is, the paternal law. So you can see why this paternal stress between the Sun and Saturn is going to be exacerbated here. So they're willing to adapt, to be pragmatic. Jupiter and the Sun are much more idealistic. They're operating on a completely different level, and they might feel cramped here. But our Adityas are adding weight for this person, the mythological story of how do we sustain humanity? And humanity is sustained not by me, and actually also not by escaping into our guru necessarily. It is about following the laws of this epoch so that we can all live. Humanity can thrive. Generations can keep growing. We have to follow the laws, like we had Draupadi, of eating, of sharing our resources here so that we don't exploit each other and we don't exploit the earth, because we need the earth for all of the generations that are going to come. So for me here, there's, for this person in the mythology, some tension between what my role truly is. And this mythology seems to be pointing to that role of sustaining life for all humans, even if that means working from behind the scenes, which is a beautiful place to work from. And usher that love of humanity, the sustainable love, that the sun has gone from this brightness to this gentleness. So a very gentle and deep love for humans, for the planet, right here in this mythology. So we have covered a little bit of the layout of the Adityas for this person. I want to bring us to some of these questions, and I'm going to pop in, we can tell Rahu's here, so I'm going to put K2 in here. They're always 180 degrees away from each other. They're on the opposite side. So K2 is showing us something about our past lives. So I'm going to talk here about K2. Now, there are many places in a Aditya chart to talk about past lives. As you know, we talked a little bit about past lives for just the sun. This person's sun is a little bit like a before and after. Perhaps in a previous lifetime, this person was very bright and has been Indra, has been someone that has been leading and had that magnetic pull over others. But in this lifetime, they are the gentle sun. This already speaks about something about their past lives. But another place we can look at past lives would be to have a look at K2 and Rahu, because K2 shows us something about the territory that we have already conquered through various lifetimes, and Rahu tells us something about the territory that is yet to be conquered. So K2 here in data, what is data about? And what is K2 there telling us? So data has a really interesting relationship with Tvasta. We can see that they are on opposite sides of the ecliptic. Tvasta is the divine architect at the drawing board, solving dharmic problems by creating new forms. Tvasta can only do that for Dharma. He cannot make forms for himself. And in fact, there is a story where his son is murdered, I believe, and Tvasta is so angry that he goes to his drawing board and he creates a demon that will kill, I can't remember, the person that killed his son or the son of the person who killed his son, so anyway, revenge. And because he is seeking it for himself, he messes it up and in fact creates a demon that is going to kill him. So this is showing us that Tvasta can only get to the drawing board and express his love of forms if he is doing it for Dharma. So here he is, the divine architect, sending his plans to Data, the love of bearing. This is where the DNA, the actual materials, this is the builder who makes stuff based on the plans. And there's always a chance for miscommunication between these guys, which actually happens in real life. You'd think architects and builders would be best friends, but I think there's a lack of respect between these two. And so Data over here is that love, Aditi's love of bearing, that she can bear humanity. And it is the love of giving support, unconditional support for no return. We're just going to give what we have so that life can continue on this journey. And in that way, Data reminds me a bit like a uterus. It will bear the fetus. It will fiercely protect that fetus. It can only look after one fertilization at a time. Like if that's 2 eggs that were fertilized at the same time or an egg that splits, that's fine. But there's no more fertilizing after that moment because the uterus is going to bear this life and it's going to give everything. Those of us lucky enough to have had children know that from the day they start putting cells in there, they're just taking minerals out of your bones, they're taking nutrients out of your blood. Your uterus is going to bear everything that this new form needs. And it has the law of protection. So we see here again a similar theme in terms of past lives. K2 is showing us that in past lives, this person has mastered being protective of a vulnerable life form, being devoted to the growth of one life form. But now in this lifetime and going forward, this person is being asked to learn to explore, to be fascinated by how does the whole of humanity keep going? Not just my baby or my family or my tribe. This is data. It's got the right to protect its circle of influence. It can be the mother bear protecting the cubs. Vivashwan and Tvasta are not about protecting their own cubs. They are looking at the love of humanity and the frail form of humans. We have a finite lifetime. So what can we do that helps all life forms to thrive? So this is what we see in terms of past lives. This person saying, where have I come from? Where am I going to? Perhaps one of the answers to that question is away from protecting some small patch and towards a love for all beings and a contribution for all humanity in a practical kind of way. Tvasta, the architect. And also we see a repeating of the theme that the sun would be very strong if it was here in Data. It's called exalted because it's got all that rocket fuel to take it on its journey. And so this person is coming from a past lifetime experience of a strong sun and perhaps a strong Martian energy into a lifetime where they are learning about Venetian energy, which is rejuvenating and sustaining humans. The frailty, the vulnerability of our human race and our human form is indicating our fascination with how to rejuvenate and heal both our Sun and Saturn, both that individual glowing joy and the gifts that we have, and how to rejuvenate our relationship with detachment, with letting things go, with passing, with grief, with loss. So Rahu giving a fascination here. And perhaps that past lives question, where have I been in past lives, we're seeing this repeated theme. Now, to go to touch on a third area about what is the Atmakaraka for this chart. Now, this would be the same if it's in tropical or if it's in Adityas, it would be different in sidereal. The Atmakaraka is Mercury. It is at 2859 of Vivashwan, so it's very close, moving here into Tvasta. And this person is, therefore, we already spoke about the strength of Vivashwan, so we don't need to say much here. Just to say that the Gemini results for Vivashwan are like Mitra, so a key, Atmakaraka, and the Gemini results are like Mitra, but with a small Raya. And this Atmakaraka is actually also in Vivashwan in the D9, in the Navamsha, so the person's Amsha as well. Mercury gives a great skill that we've already talked about, ability to organize, to be interested in information, pull out patterns, digest information, balance the left and the right, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, balancing the left column, the right column. And this helps us to digest life and experiences. And that's what this small fire is referring to, that Vivashwan gives, and Mercury here gives the ability to digest life's experiences using mercurial curiosity to keep asking questions like that, to keep asking the who am I, or whatever your spiritual practice is. Mercury will help us get to the truth through the detail. But when it says like Mitra, it's referring to Mitra, which has itchiness, is the Gemini results for Mitra. So Mercury can give us an itchiness because we pick at things, and whereas Jupiter has the big vision, Mercury can not see the forest because of the trees. It can get so into the detail. Having said that, it's absolutely delighted being with Jupiter. Any planet benefits from being with Jupiter. So it could be a spiritual gift there that it is with Jupiter. So that is the person's Atmakaraka. In terms of what has been going on in the last 3 years, the person shares that they've had a really difficult or intense 3 years. And I just want to bring to the person's attention that Saturn has been transiting through data pretty much for the last 3 years. It just left. So it is now in Arima, but Saturn's transit of each Aditya is about 3 years. So it really coincides with this time period. And why would we expect that that might be intense for the person? One is Saturn has been going over Ketu. And Ketu in Vedic astrology, these are the lunar nodes. They are eclipse points. So they have a kind of mysterious power. All of the planets go clockwise, apart from the nodes, which go anti-clockwise. So they've got this weird thing about them, right? They've got an intensity. And Ketu, where we have been. So energetically, the chart wants to make sure that we don't focus too much on where we have been, and that we do head towards the head of the serpent, towards Rahu. So in order to do that, wherever Ketu is, there kind of feels like a level of disappointment, a sense that it's not as good as I remember it. It's not as good as I expected it to be. It's a letdown. And that's Ketu's job in everybody's chart. We all have Ketu somewhere, is to let us down to make sure that we head towards Rahu. Any transit over Ketu could stimulate that sense of needing to let go of things because of disappointment, because it's not enough. I put in a whole lot of effort. I'm really trying. Maybe I'm trying to perfect something. And no matter what I do, it doesn't give me the fruits. I don't feel the benefits of it. So this could be Saturn's transit through data that has added to that. And I just wanted to point out that it would be a Saturn opposition to the natal Saturn. That can also be intense when Saturn is opposite itself in the 7th position. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that is where Saturn gets Digbala, is in the 7th. From itself, from what it's trying to achieve in the birth chart, it's in a very pragmatic space of letting go of forms. It's the divine architect. Saturn is helping that divine architect get rid of the forms that are not required, taking up room in the architect's studio, getting rid of the ideas that didn't work, the designs that don't work, even though they were beautiful, even though they were requested, they're no longer working. We have to let them go. So for lots of reasons, this transit could have been loud for the person. And as they said, it seems to have eased up. And we know that Saturn is now on its way transiting through Arima, where actually Venus owns Arima. So it's a more natural, it's going to be delighted when it's in there, whereas here it was starved. So that might be something to think about and reflect on whether that was Saturn that was the cause of these 3 years. Finally, I haven't even covered every planet. I haven't even covered all the planets. So we've got more to discuss. If this mythology was helpful and you want to, we can pick up other planets. So I'm just going to write the other planets. I'll put them in grey just so we notice which ones we didn't talk about. That we have Mars here in Vishnu, and that would be in its own home. And Venus here in Amshu. And then the moon is in Bhaga. And the ascendant is in Varuna. So we didn't talk about the ascendant, Mars, Venus, or moon, something for us to think about if we want to continue further. I just wanted to point out that there is some symmetry or some resonance here, that the person's first house is in Varuna, their 7th house is in Bhaga, and we have the ascendant lord is in the 7th house. And this matches this theme. We're looking for these recurring themes. The self, the first house, is in the 7th. So here's the eastern horizon when the person was born. This is the western horizon. This is what was disappearing, like the other side of the horizon. So that sense of self on the other side echoes that the sun is also in, this would be where the sun is exalted. It's in the 7th position from where it would be exalted. So this placement of the ascendant planet, moon, the lord of the ascendant house, is echoing these themes that we talked about this lifetime is maybe not about being the center of everything and life being about me. When one's ascendant Lord is in the seventh, life is going to be about exploring the self through my relationships with other people. And those other people, Bhaga is owned by Saturn, is quite strong here. So exploring the self through a relationship with a strong and pragmatic Saturn that is here. So I wanted to put these planets in so that if you're doing Kriya, you can think about, if you feel comfortable with this layout and you've requested an Aditya's reading, so it's a little bit different than Vedic astrology. These planets are now laid out as chakras. So perhaps if we do make the case here of the chakra spaces, and we think about the energies running through our spine, we know a little bit from looking at the Adityas, different than Vedic astrology. Up to you how to take this. If we think about these as our chakras and we think of this as our spine, we can think about the feminine and the masculine and the, Shushuma and the Ida and the Pingala. That's not a very good diagram, but everything's going left and right and male and female. I am going to call this the left side and this is the right side. So I guess this would be the back of a person. If you want to think about this from the front, you need to reverse what I'm saying. We have the moon on the feminine and left side here. Shu on the right, Venus on the right side, Mars on the feminine third chakra. Over here in the masculine side of the heart center, we've got Saturn, Sun, and Rahu. And then on the feminine side of Mercury, of our throat chakra, we have Jupiter and Mercury. We have the ascendant on the feminine side of the sixth chakra. This was your Atmakaraka planet, and this is the ascendant Lord planet. So if you like to visualize energy moving through your spine, these planets are now in that area. Let's imagine that you wanted, from our conversation, you wanted to connect with that gentle sun. Think about that masculine side of the heart center and use your breathing, your visualizations to work with that. The planets that are most challenged in this chart would be Sun is a little struggling there and Jupiter is a little struggling here. So you might do some extra mantras for those planets or visualizations or practices. And let me write view from back. So we are looking at the person's back in this diagram. Okay. I hope that this goes some way to, I'll write here, chakra diagram, to answer some of your questions. And I am looking forward to hearing what your response is, because the Adityas work on such a mythological level that it is the stories that are so important. So I want to know how this Vivashwan and Tvasta story up here resonates for you, and whether you find that you have some useful direction based on our discussion of your chart and the Adityas. I can't wait to catch up with you. Really looking forward to hearing your response. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to share your chart with these beautiful placements, Mercury in Vivashwan, Saturn in Tvasta, and can't wait to talk to you. Okay, bye.